Welcome to Crypto Disrupted, a cryptocurrency and blockchain podcast with your hosts, Trent Lipinski and Greg Kerr.
So good afternoon. I'm here with Brent Wacharski and Christopher Lockham from S7, formerly known as Noomap. They're going through a new rebranding at the moment, and we're here to talk about their organization and what exciting things they're doing within the gifting economy and some really revolutionary and wild in one hand, but very universally principled in another hand work that these guys are doing. So welcome. We appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
No, absolutely.
So guys, do you want to give you an intro of yourselves, kind of tell the audience who you are and what you're working on?
Sure. You want to go to shot? I want to go.
You go first, and then I'll read our officially agreed upon vision and intention. So you go.
Well, my name is Brett. Great to meet you guys. Great to meet everybody out there. I'm originally from New Jersey in the U.S., and I've been on a epic global adventure here with Chris and my now wife Andrea, who's the third co-founding member of S7. And we've been together for, we just looked at it, January 30th, 2013, so about 5 or 6 years. Living the gift economy experience and looking to upgrade that as well. So we're not just into the gift economy, but we've been on this epic adventure, people sharing resources and gifts and accommodations. I got married as part of the journey, and we're all growing up and working with together, personal and alchemy, and growing as people as well as a team is equally as important to us, the journey compared to the destination. So it's been amazing. And we are called the S7 Foundation, and we have a technology called Noomap. So we used to be called Noomap, but we didn't want to be associated only with technology as if we were just a startup, because our platform and our goals and our mission is much more about holistic thinking. And whole systems thinking and the whole systems platform, which Chris will share a little bit about. So I think that's good for an introduction. Yeah. And there's 3 of us co-founders. We're currently out in Toposo, Mexico, practicing and prototyping some of our thoughtware and software with 2 other groups and into a bigger project. So we practice like autonomy and synergy together, right? The future is decentralization, distribution, synergy, everyone working together yet being in their own spaces and doing their own thing as well, as an I and as in a we. So we're in a we space right now a lot, working with these 2 other projects. And the name of that project that is coming out of the synergy between the 3 of us is called the Infinite World Game, which is something we'll talk a little bit about too. So there's 2 parallel things happening. Rolling out our Noomap technology, which is a thing we've been pioneering, and then this Infinite World Game, which sort of builds on that, but for a different reason.
Yeah, so I would say that S7 are a community, and there are 2 other communities here with us that are forming either a super community or a network, so just to clarify. And but yeah, maybe it's good to just introduce S7 for now, and then we come back to the larger context. So I'll just read, my name's Chris, and I'll read the vision of S7 Foundation that we agreed upon very recently, because we're continually in emergence, like things kind of haven't fully crystallized, or maybe they never will, but this is our vision right now. Our vision is for a synergistic co-creative world based on the foundational energies of love, trust, joy, and compassion, and the 7 S's of co-creation: synergy, syntropy, syntony, synchronicity, self-creativity, suprasex, spontaneity, where humanity and all life on Earth can thrive together in harmony and abundance. So that's our vision, which is like the broad desire that we would like to see manifest. And then we have a more focused intention within that, which is to, and this is more me, Tan and Brett, to hold the vision and blueprint for the physical manifestation of a whole systems infrastructure, which is mental, social, technological, economic, physical, enabling a scalable global reality and lifestyle choice of synergistic co-creation. So part of what we're doing is thoughtware in a mental layer of a whole systems infrastructure. So every word I've just used that's novel would have a definition, part of our thoughtware and our mental layer of the system. Then we have new ways of operating socially, we are running a CIC based UK business, but that's more like a slice, like a circle of a sphere, and we see ourselves more as like not a business, but a holon, which is part of our thoughtware. So we see ourselves as a vision-centered or co-created holon, which we categorize as type gamma, with intention-centered collaborative sub-holons, which are type beta. And we're using a new software sort of licensing approach that we call hollow sourcing, which is part of our like economic layer. But we organize as in things called holons, which is an abstract structure. And we use synergistic technology that helps us map and think in that way in holons, which is based on fractals. So it's really like we want to enable a new reality, a new lifestyle. And what we've seen is like lifestyles and realities are multi-layered things. They're ways of thinking, they're ways of socially interacting. It connects to the physical world where we use particular technology and resources in a particular way. You know, so it's a multi-layered phenomenon, and we've been building software and tools to help us think in this new way, where everything is mapped in graph structures, which mirror the way the brain functions in networks, and also the way the universe appears to be structured energetically with this fractal recurring pattern of, it's like a fractal graph structure of nodes and links. So we've basically created we're creating media or media platforms, but not like whole computing platforms based on that understanding and that structure. And it all mirrors this synergistic thinking, which contrasts with separation thinking, which is silo thinking, which is just the left brain, right? So it's like considering everything in isolation and over-specializing in different separate domains to generalize thinking, looking at the interconnectivity between everything, and then changing society and technology and everything based on not thinking in separation consciousness anymore. But then that's all a load of mental thought forms, but there's also a massive like emotional feeling part of this, where we're moving into our hearts and we're trusting our emotions and interpreting our emotions in a new way, and that we're using them as a guidance system and as a compass to modulate our thoughts. So then the authority becomes more of this feminine thing of the body and the feelings. And so like we're also experiencing a lot of healing and doing all this inner work. And, you know, we get triggered, and we have this language, we get triggered, which means that we've said something and it's brought up emotions, and then it's like, okay, there's the whole process for that. And that was all part of our social architecture on a kind of primitive level in S7, but we're now taking that to like mastery level in this larger field that we call Together. And part of the infrastructure of the infinite world game will be this like alchemy stuff. But it's still all, you know, there's like, because there's so much novelty and emergence in this vortex we're in, it's like there's still like a lack of coherence to some extent, because pieces are still synergizing. But we, as S7, we have some very concrete things. We have a roadmap for Noomap, which is a holonic technology, holonic communication technology that is going to use 3D isomorphic interfaces. So like you see information in fractals, and then you can look at the same information on a geographic kind of map or space, and then the same information on a chronographic space, which is like mapping time on a fractal timeline. So like you can morph between these three, and we're calling that Noomap Cobra. And we're also, all the data is going to be stored in hollow chains, which is a bit like blockchain, but instead of it being a monolithic thing, it's more like a network of chains that all interoperate. And it's a different thing, but yeah, sorry, that was just kind of just, you know,
yeah,
maybe you want to feedback and ask.
Yeah, can you go into like what is the ultimate intention here? Like, who's going to be using these tools? Are these for communities? Are these for businesses? Are these for governments? What is the, who are these tools for, and what can these tools help those people accomplish?
Ultimately, the tools are for everybody. I've learned an interesting thing. There's a slight distinction between tools we may build and then how we want to use those tools ourselves. Mm-hmm. So the tools we're building, like Noomap, the base form of it called holonic collaborative mapping, is general enough at this point. It's like a super strong proof of concept that we've proven. using a holonic database, using synergy, creating a synergy engine instead of a search engine, and having a multi-dimensional platform where people are simultaneously social networking at the same time that they're crowdfunding, at the same time that they're self-organizing, at the same time that they're project managing, et cetera, et cetera. So what we're going to do is we're going to roll Noomap out in a decentralized, distributed, and synergistic fashion, technologically as well as socially. So instead of saying it's open source or it's closed source, we call it hollow source, because we don't want people to just not benefit, and we don't want people to run away with it. There has to be some type of synergy, reciprocity, shared alignments and agreements. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because many people will be able to build on top of that basic architecture of a holonic database and holonic thinking and synergistic thinking. So the architecture and the engineering of the technology provides this foundation for a future where everything is more holistic, more synergistic. Whether people choose to use it in that way or not may be their choice, but the actual architecture, you know, and engineering allows for that. So when you say, well, businesses, you know, use the technology, or organizations or governments or entrepreneurs, everyone really will be able to use the technology and create the world and the universe and apply it the way they, you know, see fit, other than some standardization and interoperability protocols. So the system is able to remain holistic on a foundational, necessary, and sufficient level. So it remains with the intention of the software, which is synergism and holistic thinking. So there will be some, like a global hub, like, you know, like maybe it's like the Mozilla Foundation. There'll be a Noomap global hub that just coordinates and helps, you know, make sure people are trying to coordinate to the best of their ability, not being redundant with what they're building. Like, some people in that system will look to always co-create and synergize together. Like, why would I build a social networking system on Noomap if someone else is going to do it? Can we work together to build something that's greater than the two of us? But we also realize we want people to have the freedom to be autonomous in a sense, you know, and use it as they see fit, other than some of these standards. Like, we don't want people, you know, running guns with it if we can avoid something like that. So if there's some way to sort of inspire that without controlling it, that would be important. So that's, like, to answer your question, who can use it? We envision anyone being able to use it because it's so effective and multidimensional in its applications when you use this holonic thoughtware and the holonic technology just as a base level. I think Chris could probably talk a little bit about, so how do people apply it? You can use it for self-organization. You can use it for new socioeconomic models.
I think it needs a little clarity because we have a roadmap, and the next milestone with Noomap is specifically a collaborative holonic mapping technology where the data and it's stored in holochains, right? Which is that's a significant thing, but it doesn't include co-creation per se. It doesn't include specifically facilitating self-organization and alternative socioeconomic systems. But it's a significant milestone because it helps us collaboratively map everything so we can see what the heck's going on. We can make informed decisions. It's giving us intel, right? We need to know what the heck is going on right now. Like, you know, we need intel, like, to use a military word. That's part of our intel will come from collaboratively mapping everything of significance and sharing that. It's that simple. Like, there's massive, massive issues with the current social network paradigm that we're using and the current version of the web. We can't see each other. It's limiting our perception of each other relative to, from the perspective of there being other possibilities. Okay. Otherwise, you know, it's better like no technology. Okay, unless we're completely psychic. But there's, you know, which might happen, by the way. But like, while we are playing in the realm of technology, we want to create something that connects us in a different way, and that's Noomap's going to help us make things visible in a new way. We have something called the co-creator effect, but there's almost like this overview effect, you know, especially when you connect the data and to visualization systems in VR. And you can see it like a global map of the energy. You know, it's like a global brain type scenario. and it will have its own overview effect, like you have when you go into space and you look at the Earth. But beyond that, which we're calling Noomap Cobra, that milestone, we've got Noomap Quetzalcoatl.
In honor of
because we're in Mexico, right? So the snake then grows wings and begins to fly. Flying serpent enables holonic meta-socioeconomics. And I know that sounds like a bit of a mouthful, but the words are really important. And really what it is, it's like it's a platform for creating for creating socioeconomic systems. So imagine like you've got like eBay and FreeCycle, sofa surfing, these like web applications, that databases and language and ontology. These are like little socioeconomic systems or games. And there's a meta level of understanding where we have a meta ontology of things like games, intention, ontology. The ontology includes ontology. And then we can create a meta level system of systems and basically make socioeconomic programmable. So making culture, or at least parts of culture, more programmable, and doing it in a decentralized way. So, and this meta system then gives you like a viable alternative to the sort of current dominant socioeconomic game that we confuse with life itself, that you could call consumer capitalism or whatever, but that's really just a game. But when you create a meta game where you can map all the games and synergize all the games, then you see, it's just a game, it's just one way of doing it, right? And the data is stored and the information is processed in those games in such a way that blah, 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 etc., etc. So we actually have like this map, right? So like, we call it alpha, beta, gamma at the moment, like, and this is like competition land where everyone's competing. And this is collaboration land where you have like more like social entrepreneurial, impact hubs and stuff, collaboration. And then co-creation or synergistic co-creation is kind of in the center. And as you go into the center, there's more and more and more interconnectivity until everyone is fully interconnected and they're acting as one unity. Yeah. Even though it's decentralized, it's based on resonance and alignment through intent. It creates like a different kind of geometry, right? So like that's one dimension of this like interconnectedness. Then you have like something like the chakra system, for example, which gives you like this functional dimension, yeah? So you can imagine that like radially around like sectors, like the chakras. So you've got like the root is like the red, the root chakra is like all to do with resources and physical stuff. And then the next one up is like to do with like the body or emotions. And the third one is like organization and will and governance. And, there's different ways of like categorizing things. Then you have 7 holonic levels, which I have to show horizontally because there you got these like fractal levels. So you've got a kind of, you go from the individual level to relationships, to teams or families, to organizations or communities, to networks, to meta networks, to the planet. So we have a 7-level grid, if you like, or you can imagine this as like the game board, if you like. It's like you've got people in a more competition reality, and then they're working on like different levels and they have different functions. So it's just like this is just one like set of metrics and interfaces, but we're building a thing that enables us to map everything and look at it from all different perspectives. So that's one thing. But anyway, that's a massive tangent, because going back to like Quetzalcoatl is when you go from collaborative holonic mapping to the holons becoming more like little interface elements. And it might be like a token system, a wallet, you can create an entire socioeconomic game through like little Lego bricks and then put it out there. And that's the next version of Noomap that we're calling Quetzalcoatl. And we call it holonic meta socioeconomics, because you're creating socioeconomic systems like little holons, and the rules, if you like, are programmed into what we call holochain DNA, which is the equivalent of like a smart contract on Ethereum. It's like some code that creates certain constraints that are like a rule system. It's a system of like a decentralized governance kind of as well.
It's like a governance contract.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like in a hollow chain, each hollow chain has its own like DNA, which determines what can happen in that hollow chain. And based on the peer validating the data that they're flowing through the chain, through that fixed DNA thing, then they pass it on or not. So in hollow chain, the consensus occurs through a peer or a group or a neighborhood passing messages on if it passes its validation rules locally in the node. And each hollow chain is its own like stream of information, and to access and use the chain, everyone has to have the same source code, because it's a hash function of the source code, and the DNA is the address of the hollow chain to connect to the DHT. But anyway, that's techie stuff. But basically,
all those hollow chains connect, and they can all interact with each other.
Yeah,
well.
It's instead of a monolithic silo reality of a blockchain, it's a like multiplicity of truths and paradigms, but they can all interoperate. So we're building a whole UI layer over that, and we see this as an emerging new version of the web, or almost like an operating system for a global computer. And that's the co-creation between me and Nico and Harlan and a bunch of other techies involved in Hollow and other projects. But we're looking to synergize that as one part of the tech layer of a whole systems platform enabling a new lifestyle. So that's just the new web. Then you bring a global decentralized computer that's holographic is only a part of what is happening. And this is why we use words like UFO. It's like the UFO is landing. The UFO is the synergy of all of our solutions and innovations when we're all synergized and in harmony and following our passion and getting what we need. What we create is this massive UFO, and it will naturally self-organize into little sort of functional sectors, and it will be like a global organism. So like we're partially like channeling like blueprints, but everyone is channeling blueprints when they're following their passion and creativity. You know, it's coming from somewhere. It's not arbitrary. And that to me is like something that I guess it needs more validation and research and evidence. But I've noticed when I follow my passion and everyone else follows their passion, there's a natural there's something kind of magical that happens, and it feels like there's a grand design, and we're like puzzle pieces in that grand design, and you get synchronicity and things fit together in a mysterious way. And like I don't think it's beyond our understanding. I just think there's something there of interest that's like maybe we would have to broaden our concepts and our thinking to really understand it. Do you know what I'm saying?
And Christopher, let me
go ahead, Greg.
Oh, okay. I was going to jump in because, all right. So I'm the layperson in the group. You guys are, you got these high IQs and a lot of like computing understanding. Our first episode, we had Matthew from Holochain, and he explained to us Holochain. It was super enlightening, and my mind has still been wrapping around meta currencies and, this new definition of value. And then we had Jay from Experience the Game. And now you guys are kind of coming together and mixing the two, talking about the holochains and then enriching the human existence through this technology. And so as I was reading through your website and all your materials, the only thing I was trying to build a logic bridge to somebody like me that can kind of make a comparison. And I started thinking about Craigslist. And I thought of like how you guys are advocating to put out an intention, and then somebody meets that intention, and you guys have kind of geospatially put that into kind of like a map or eventually a VR environment. So if somebody wants to sell a motorbike on Craigslist, they put that intention out there, and then somebody in that geographic community, because it is broken down by San Francisco and LA, right? Then somebody in that community can come and they can meet under that intention and pursue it, right? So that's a very simplistic view of what I feel like what I took out of what you guys are trying to do is like throw out intentions. And I like the maps that you guys are more like the playing board, I guess, of your game, where you have all these circles and then you start seeing all these intentions, then the people within those intentions and the effort going into those intentions. And you're saying that those efforts are also computer aided. There's a hollow that is dictating how that cooperation is facilitated. Am I catching it right?
Yeah, I just want to maybe help you out as well, and just for the audience. First of all, the website we have, noomap.info, is severely outdated and needs a major upgrade. And it was almost like, preaching to the choir. So it was definitely not our best universal, layman's type of thing. It was basically to attract our next step and communicate something to a kind of a niche group. So we want to acknowledge that, and also just let everyone know at some point we've got to literally update our website to communicate what has been happening the last 12 months really, and 18 months, and also find a way to more easily communicate it, number one. I also want to just share in presence very quickly why it was called Noomap, Noomap. And that comes from the idea of the noosphere, which is a term that kind of arrived in the 1900s from a couple different places and a couple different people. And it comes from the Greek meaning mind. Nous is mind. And one of the definitions that is most resonant of noosphere is a postulated stage of evolution where mind, consciousness, and interpersonal relationships dominate. So this idea of a Noomap is not just like a mind mapping tool. It's this, map of consciousness more itself, of interpersonal relationship, and mind as in capital M mind, not a local mind. So I just wanted to share a little bit about that. And the word UFO we use, the acronym is Universal, United, and Unnameable Fractal Organism, right? So the disclosure here is like the real UFO, from my perspective, is this. It's this united fractal organism. So we can be fractal, we can be in our own spaces, but at the same time, we're universal and united, connected, and we're an organism, not an organization or a business anymore. We can do all of these things, and it's more based on biomimetics and things we perceive like if Plato was building a social network or technology, he'd probably look like this guy, So thanks for giving me some space to just share that so people are aware of some of the origin of that. And
you guys live this, right? So your lifestyles are kind of based around this. And you briefly touched on it, talking about the gift economy. Can you go into that, like how you guys live and what the gift economy is?
Yeah. You mind if I continue?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's an important point, and I thank you for asking, because for us it's very significant to say we actually do live this. The past 5 or 6 years, we have been living in the gift economy. For 90% of our resources and when we say resources, and talking a little bit about the meta currencies from Matthew, the Village Lab and meta currencies and Scepter projects were huge inspirations. We're friendly with all of them in general. And the idea of these currencies, Art Brock, talked about currencies. What are you seeing? Where's the energy? And I borrowed that myself, and I called it a holonic cryptocurrency. So every intention that is shared, every vision, every motorbike, every desire, every chair, every fiat dollar, every Bitcoin is a currency, really, in a meta currency system. So in a holonic database, a world game where every element on the planet is being mapped, anything that can be perceived as an individual thing is mapped. It's a currency, really. So now we're talking about integral wealth, which is what, the meta currency folk, and they speak much more elegantly than I do about it. But integral wealth, this deep wealth, this value you brought up, Greg, like revaluing things and how we value things, and a lot more equality and justice in the system. So what you shared about, the Craigslist as an example, that is perfectly fine. That is one game, in the Noomap system, like people matching needs with desires. That's why I called it a synergy engine rather than a search engine. And Barbara Marx Hubbard is a friend of ours and was a big inspiration. So we also pay her a lot of homage. Like the synergy engine is a concept she used to talk about, and we're just bringing our genius and upgrading, how we see that. And the 7 S's of a co-creation is like a matrix that she also brought up. So I just want to give a shout out to her. So, a synergy engine is like, if you did a search, Greg, on Google or like Facebook for like, I need a motorbike, what are you going to get? Like, how does that work out? You have to go to Craigslist in order to have that need, like service match, like needing match. But we believe there's a bigger meta platform where you can do Craigslist at the same time that you're social networking, at the same time you're project managing. And this is also only one way of looking at it, like one game. So it's a very flexible tool. And what we were just talking about earlier is there's a lot of ways to apply the hammer that we're building, you know, to keep it a simple metaphor. We're very much interested in building the hammer that allows people to live this new lifestyle because of the way the hammer was built. But really, the answer for me is always yes. When someone says, can you do this, like with Noomap, like, or the Infinite World game, can you do this? Will it do that? The answer is always yes, because what we're building on the foundational level is a tool for change.
But it's also something that will create itself. It's a seed that will have its own self-creative dynamics, because we are providing an infrastructure for self-organization. It's like planting a seed for something that can create itself. So we have a vision of this decentralization taken to another level, where humanity is co-creating the planet. You know, it's a self-governing species. It doesn't need to be fragmented and have a few people make decisions, you know, for everyone else. And everyone, you know, we don't necessarily, there's an alternative, you know, there's alternative ways of doing this. And, you know, this is like a spaceship and, you know, the spaceship needs communication systems. It needs like social architecture for governance and decision making. And we're looking at, well, what's the optimal set of elements in that whole system for us to experience, you know, like our highest evolutionary purpose being fulfilled, and, you know, following, you know, fulfilling our desires, expanding spiritually, or everything, but like honoring each person's individual needs and desires and perceiving them as a creator, not just a consumer. But like all of this is like language and stuff. And I think like what I got from your question was like, that was the Craigslist example is like one socioeconomic game, if you like. And each socioeconomic game has its own language and rules. And we're kind of at this meta level where in the larger field, we're looking at what is like the game that enables us to be free and live in harmony. Yeah. But on the other hand, we're also building this like glue or infrastructure where the medium is the message, the medium is synergy, but like the messages you send, what you do on there is up to you. So you can have a competitive based organization. You can, you know, we don't want to exclude anyone. We want to be inclusive, but we're creating this like synergistic network, if you like, where you have synergistic competition, synergistic collaboration, synergistic co-creation. So just like television is biased, you know, and newspapers are biased because the medium is the message. Our medium is this holonic technology, and that really is the message. It's guerrilla ontology as well, because once you start using holons, you start thinking in holons, and then you start to understand the advantage of and the meaning, a different meaning behind this, like, you know, this, that everything's connected, and it's a bit of a wormhole, I guess.
No, honestly, so Trent and I have this stated intention, and part of this podcast is to document kind of our exploration of how do we reverse climate change. And we saw the blockchain and the use of kind of economic systems as the tool that's going to reverse human behavior to be more sympathetic or empathetic with the environment. And so it started going down this realm that like blockchains can tie us numerically to our activity, and that activity to the environment and the overall health of the planet, right? So I'm like, okay, like now I'm starting to think we are all connected, and the blockchain is giving us this like measuring device to measure that connection to each other and to the environment. So when I started seeing your guys' stuff, and then I was like contemplating it, and I was like, I wonder if our own little like effort could just build itself. If I put climate change as an intention and all the technologies that we hope to use in reversing climate change, or at least helping communities find balance with their garbage and water and air, then maybe it kind of takes on its own, because it's that stone soup approach that if I put climate change or Project X to turn sewage into electricity, then all the players interested in that can come and provide value to that effort.
Yeah, awesome. I think this is a really good bridge to share some about the specific purpose and intention of this Infinite World game, which comes some from what Bucky Fuller was talking about, you know, in the 50s and 60s and whatnot, and which is like, we need to see all the information. Everyone has to have access to it. It has to be fun. It has to be accessible to everybody. I just wanted to finish. Is it okay if I just finish a thought on the gift economy? Because I felt
please go ahead.
I really like people to hear this, because I shared before we got on the call here a little bit, like during this journey of this, our living in the gift economy, and I call it gift consciousness because I want to get out of just economy, because the associations people have. So gift consciousness, gift economy. I've gotten married during this process. Like, we've been to 10 different countries. We've lived in 4 different countries.
No, this is the 8th country I've lived in 3 years.
8th country in 3 years.
Love it.
I've been nomadic, and I've had no permanent or reliable income. It's just been flow.
Yeah, we've been, like, if you added up the donations and like accommodations and this integral wealth, right? Some people have gifted us gifting healing sessions. We got married, me and Andrea, at this amazing event at the Uplift Festival, like spontaneously. We've stayed in, like, we lived in the bottom of a cake factory, and we lived in a $10 million house once. Like, we've had all these experiences. And
cupcake.
Yeah, I mean, if you added it up in dollars, like the space we're given, the time, the healing, it's probably $5 or $10 million. Like, if you literally wanted to add up people's time and skills in an old-fashioned way. So I just like to share that to make people realize is, like, the only way to live in this new way is to live in this new way and trust life and trust each other. And the more we do this all together, the more it scales up, and the more we actually end up in a resource-based, I call it a resource-based gift economy. So it's not as mechanical for me as like this RBE, where it's like all technology. It's a resource-based gift economy. And gift economy, by definition, usually means giving without expectation of immediate returns or results. So some people think we want to go beyond transaction. We don't really need transactions anymore. It's you share because you want to share, and then you will receive as well, because that's just the actual.
Everyone else is sharing.
Because everyone else is doing that. So people that don't believe the gift economy or the gift consciousness can scale, you're just wrong.
So this is gamma. This is the gamma part of the field. But we want to synergize everyone. So we're not saying like no competition is wrong, no collaboration is wrong. We're actually providing a platform for everyone to come together and play their own games in their own ontology with their own interfaces. The platform itself is synergistic, but we have a personal preference.
Well, that goes
we're
back
playing
to what I
our
was saying.
game.
Yeah.
We're playing our game on the platform. We're creating our game in the platform. And our game is this game of extreme synergy and freedom, and where you don't have to earn a living, where you receive a basic income or everything you need, through the entire gamma system acting as a unified whole, like almost like a giant company, right? But like there's a commons associated with it, and this is where the hollow source licensing comes in to create that in a kind of rounded way. But there's system of agreements mapped as intentions, but it's sort of, because we have to interface with the rest of the world, then there needs to be a sort of more legal representation of that. It's all about interfacing, right? So we didn't just want a standard GPL open source license, because then the system doesn't have this exponential growth dynamic. But if you say, okay, well, we want to live in a gift economy, but like we want to grow this gift economy to scale it up, then we need to bring resources into the gift economy to share. But how can we do that if all the resources on the whole planet are monopolized by people who demand a specific form of currency in exchange for that resource, and will physically force you to there's that kind of, so we want to synergize with everyone. We want to bring everyone together, but we also want to live in a global gift economy and have it scale up, have everything we need given to us unconditionally to support us in our creativity. So we're completely obliterating the meme of earning a living. And there's a whole thing just about that, because you realize that when you stop acting in a silo and you start sharing everything, there's actually an emergence of value, of greater values that comes through the synergy, because the whole is more than the sum of its parts. So you get the synergistic value of a community of people co-creating and sharing and following their passion is higher than the individual sum of all of these, or the value that we can create individually. The whole is more than the sum of its parts. It's an extra thing. And it's like there's a formula for scalable, exponentially scalable global abundance, and it goes something like this: follow your passion and self-regulate through your emotions to continue to follow your passion, share and synergize. And it's basically, that's it. Like, and it's like creates like a torus dynamic where synergy is occurring, value is being created, and then it goes out and it gets exchanged for, there's an exchange of value, and then it can expand. And then there's like a migration in there. So the field is growing, and like it's a transition. This is just a transition model, but ultimately we can only really create games and proposals, and then there's going to be a natural evolutionary process where the best games will win. And ultimately we may or may not all end up playing some game like co-creation that's so general. It's like vision, passion, desire, intention, skill, resource. And we have like an essentials process that helps to synergize and bring to you what you need as a unique individual in the now. And then things to facilitate sharing and co-creation on different levels. So it's really, does that make sense? I guess it
does.
No, go ahead, Trent.
So what I was going to say is, to me, this basically sounds like the opposite of Facebook, because you go on Facebook, and I love, the fact that you're using the term games and explaining it as a game, because, people don't realize when they go on Twitter, when they go on Facebook, when they participate in social media, they are playing a game with the world, and they are playing a game that is regulated by the intentions of the developers who created those systems. So you have to play by their rules, and we don't even know what the rules are. There is no rules. You can't go to facebook.com/rules and read the rules. There's terms of service, there's, community guidelines or whatever, but we don't actually know how the algorithms work. We don't actually know how communities interact. We don't actually know what happens to the data. I go post something on Facebook and it's gone 24 hours later. So
box. It's a black box.
It's just exactly, it's a black hole. So what you guys are talking about is in the tools that you're creating is you're creating a system so that, ultimately you've got the ability to keep that data. So that data can then be reviewed and used later and then incorporated into other systems. So now, instead of that information going into a black hole, you're actually putting that into a system that can then interact and relate to the rest of everything else within the network.
But we're creating a system within which the users can create their own systems that are analogous to Facebook with a specific ontology, which is the category of things that exist in that domain, such as friends list, such as friend, such as group, such as page, such as like. This is an ontology. So by using Facebook, you're like tuning your mind into a specific ontology, which is like a lens that you view reality through. It's like the things that exist in that reality, like friend. Mm-hmm. And they can have attributes as well. And there's types of things or types of holons, and then the holons have attributes. Okay, so like instead of putting people in a box and forcing them to it's really about our offer. Our offer isn't look at it through this lens. Our offer is like a kind of meta lens where everything is holons, and you can create your own lens in that. So like Facebook is like a lens, and by using Facebook, you're sort of you're just looking at everything through one lens. And what we want to do is liberate people from these silos of perception and meaning. So again, it's this pattern of silo busting is moving from separation to synergy. So there's all these like silos, like the data storage is siloed, right? Like you mentioned, and they own the data, they have the data. There's a silo there of data. So we're busting that silo down when we're storing all of it in hollow chains. And then we're busting a silo of perception when you can switch the interface, and you're not stuck with like one interface for the data. Like that's another thing we don't realize is that like the majority of our public data is stored in Google and Facebook servers, and we can only access tiny bits of that information through their APIs. And so
in some cases it's 1% or less. I mean, literally. We're
Exactly.
accessing 1% or less of our own data.
Yeah. So what ends up, so the conclusion of that is that the interfaces or the ways you can experience that data are extremely limited. But what we want to do is redesign the whole web so all the data is stored in this decentralized way through holochains, and it's like aggregated and perceived through different interfaces or lenses. So one of the technologies and things I'm working on right now is Arc, which is a holonic computing platform or holonic operating system. So I'm building that in parallel to helping with Noomap's roadmap. But then I'm going to synergize what I'm doing with Holo eventually, and we're going to build like a whole UI layer on top of Holo, which is this new web, which is the global computer, and it's silo busting like crazy. And so the whole idea of a social network will be different on that system. Like it's such a quantum leap forward. It's, you know, it's like kind of hard to describe in a way. Like,
well, and it's also one of the things I want to bring up is essentially that it sounds like the tools you're creating kind of tap into collective consciousness. So you kind of hit on this topic a little bit earlier, but I think that's kind of the term you know, maybe you were looking for, is you're tapping into how consciousness functions, how people already think, and how communities already synergize and come together. Because on a basic level, I believe humans, you know, we're a social species. This is kind of a part of our DNA. You know, we're constructed in a way to work together with other people. And then, you know, but then we get born into this world of all these artificial constructs. So it sounds like the tools that you guys are working on actually remove those artificial constructs and try to create a system, a computer system that functions similarly to how consciousness and collective consciousness functions.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a mirror. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And we don't shy away from that. Like that's why we're here on the planet. Like that's our gift and our offering and our highest excitement is to work on that level for sure.
We're big fans of biomimicry and like, you know, using nature as inspiration, like mimicking nature, aligning with nature, and everything, like all of the stuff we're doing is biomimetic. You know, it's much more organic and more like almost like more alive in a way. Yeah.
And a lot of physics and like, I mean, Chris had, you know, a master's in like evolutionary adaptive systems, and then he was 2 years into PhD, you know, cybernetics and this and that. And the other people on our team and in our community are maybe PhD level physicists. They might not have a degree on their wall from Stanford or something, but those are the type of minds and hearts like in our field influencing what we do. Like, I mean, I often say we're building a particle accelerator for consciousness. Mm-hmm. And that really, if you think about code is written in strings, right? And holons are like a closed string for the people out there that are into physics and loop quantum gravity. But like, we're basically working at that level, like you're saying, Trent, consciousness and math and physics, and creating something that is actually string theory applied rather than a mathematical equation. If you have strings of code and building blocks like holons instead of the chemical elements, they're like quarks and atoms. We're working on that level, and I believe we actually are building a particle. I come out and say it. I think we actually are, in one metaphorical way, building a particle accelerator for consciousness. And the infrastructure, and like you're saying, Trent, is about that layer of information.
We're also big fans of Terence McKenna.
Big fans of Terence McKenna, and our friend Jude Currivan just wrote a book called oh God, what is it? A hologram. It's something, Jude Currivan, but she talks about how the world, reality is a hologram, and that information is actually prior to space-time and matter and energy. It's actually a lower level foundation, and that space and time and energy and matter come out of information. And she's a classically trained physicist, actually, by the way. And she's bringing a lot of the world into the marrying spirituality and physics to be like, this is no joke. Everything is consciousness. And there's space-time, and there's energy and matter. So we're definitely like on that, interested in that aspect of creation itself. So, and I wanted to also make sure, I'm going to open up for any questions or feedback, but I wanted to also attend to what Greg was sharing with putting the mission, like a mission of, you know, ending, reversing climate change into the system and what would happen. And so if you guys want to ask a question or reflect, I'd like to share about that.
Go ahead.
Is that cool? Cool with you, Greg?
Yeah, please, absolutely.
Cool. So some of our partners here, so this infinite world game is almost like an application built on top of this foundational type of architecture. And the infinite world game, among many things it may or may end up being, one of the critical pieces is the ability for the planet to go on a collective missions together. And so there might be this level where the planet is able to say, we have a need to end poverty. We see that as a collective. They call it social acupuncture. And there's, people say we need to reverse climate change. And that need goes out into the infinite world game. And this is where, like, there's different levels. There's teams that respond to that. There's communities that respond to that. There's individuals that respond to that. And there's an orchestration, coordination, and self-organizing system that allows all of those pieces, like multi-stakeholder, from the US government to an NGO in Africa to the S17, to actually be able to work together to solve the problem of climate change. And you can imagine how many players would be in that, right? How many players would be in a global mission to end poverty, and all the egos as well, right? And all of the things that have been coming in the way of us all coming together as a planet to resolve some of these things. And a holonic system, because of the database and these holons, allows for self-organization much more easily. Yeah. And the simple thing is, like, I already use sociocracy and holacracy in Noomap in our prototype. Like, just to answer one of the original questions, how can people use it? Like, is it, how will, communities use Noomap? You can basically apply sociocracy or holacracy within Noomap in 5 minutes, because it's based on circles and team and energetic structures, and you can change the ontology. So while, the people in this community call their group of people a team and they have needs, another community has requests and they call their little teams pods. It doesn't matter, because the lower level system can also interconnect them in the infinite world game. So it's really easy to self-organize in a holonic system. It's easy to say there's an intention in the middle of this team and everyone's gravitating towards that. If you guys are familiar with the Reinventing Organizations work of Frederick Laloux and this meme of a teal organization and a teal paradigm and teal businesses, where people are self-governing and self-organizing, communities are doing that. I know it's not the greatest answer, but it's just to give you an idea. I actually have used the prototype. I've mapped out sociocracy in Noomap. Someone maps, attention, and then someone maps a proposal, and then everyone can comment and reply to that proposal. So like it's very easy to actually use even the prototype as it is now to help communities do that. It just needs to be, it needs a bigger team on it. That's why we need to roll it out, and we need developers and all that to help us. Chris is the only one basically that coded our prototype, amazingly enough, because he's the only one on our little team that actually knows how to do zeros and ones in the back end. So it's quite awesome actually as a prototype, considering Chris basically, with a little bit of help from a UI designer at one point and another guy, but he's basically built most of that prototype proof of concept by himself, technologically.
So no, I appreciate that, because I'm going through this journey of understanding. When I went into cryptocurrency and then, this meta currency idea, and then trying to apply and see into the future to say, how does this really mesh with the human condition? And, I started thinking about, waste to energy. Once again, I see a lot of things through that lens, and then you've said this, the universal currency concept. And in my head, I've heard certain tech leaders talk about, here soon, everybody's going to need just like to be given an income, a basic income. And, that turns a lot of people off. And so I started thinking about the idea that, what if we just use the human condition? There's certain realities that need to be met within the human condition. If we set values, which these computer algorithms allow us to do, we set values to the human condition or to these natural functions, then we can start producing value just by human condition. So using a toilet, but that toilet obviously being used, in a waste to energy system, could then be able to use or create value just by the metaphysical process. Maybe, planting plants to have cleaner air, and there's some way to track that, okay, well, we're influencing the human condition to be better suited for the human condition. And these apps and algorithms allow us or facilitate that value to be captured and shared. So that's where I'm kind of going. Like I'm seeing this evolution even in myself of the concept of understanding. And then now to kind of look at what you guys are doing and take it to that next level to show the work behind it. When I first saw this intention-based system, I started thinking in a religious parallel of faith, right? People have faith in something, but even they have a loophole in that philosophy that says faith without works is dead. So I started thinking, intentions. You hear a lot of people, I've put my intention to the universe, so it's going to come back to me. And yeah, there's some truth to, if you're thinking about something, it ends up manifesting. It's constantly on your mind and you work toward that pursuit. But what I feel like you guys have built is the work behind the intention, or the work that helps facilitate the intention, right? So if the universe does work that way, then the tool you built absolutely amplifies that universal kind of truth, that setting an intention brings it to you or manifests, because it allows that manifestation. So the work is there.
I think that's fair enough to say we're working more on the manifestation process than any particular part of it. It's more the deeper workings you're saying that allows that process. I mean, it's pretty. I'm gonna turn over to Chris for a second. It's pretty awesome. It's pretty epic, and I like your story of you're learning a lot of new things yourself, even in your own life at this time. And like talking to people like Jay from X the Game and Matt from HoloChain and speaking with us, I'm not shy to say, and I speak with equal level humble and equal level arrogance, I guess. Like there's not many people on the planet in my travels and my talking who are doing like the type of work, because I don't mean compare, the type of work that like Holo and Jay is talking about here. This is not just blockchain anymore, right? Blockchain is almost outdated already if you want to talk conceptually, you know what I mean? Things are moving faster in the age of novelty and, the information every 6 months. And if you want to look at the Mayan stuff and all that, but I mean, no matter what lens you have, it's kind of clear things are like massive. This is like breakdown time, right? With the climate change and all that. So I'm excited and proud to say we're pretty like eccentric and special and grounded, like this is, and the people you're talking to are going way, way beyond the venture capital, social, entrepreneurial, like memes that for me are mostly surrounding blockchain and that whole world of venture capital. And I don't mean to put it in a box, so let me be clear to the audience. I know things are not just black or white, so. But
no, I told Matt, I said, hey, the finance world is hijacking the blockchain. And he stopped me. He goes, hijacking? They were baked in, man. Yeah, good point. This is a financial tool. I always saw it being hijacked, but no, it kind of is. But what you guys are doing, being agent focused, is more of a human condition focus,
That's why it's sociotechnological, like is the best word I can find, just sociotechnological. And that's why we always talk about the healing. Yeah. We're not shy to talk about our feelings. And like, I mean, this guy, he can talk about crop circles and he can talk about cybernetic systems and he can talk about his feelings and he can talk about, quantum physics. Like we're all about grounding the mystical state, as Barbara said in one of her words. It's grounding the mystical state into spirit motivated social action. And mystics originally were the best combination of scientist and religious person. Our true mystic was an integral person who could play in all different.
Alchemists too, yeah. So
I'd like to also have another show sometime where we bring the rest of the team to tell you about the Infinite World game as well, because like I think you guys really it'd be great for you to hear some other voices on that as well.
Sure. Yeah, unfortunately we got to wrap up soon, but I think Chris, you wanted to say something before we do.
Yeah, there's a bunch of things. Yeah, I guess one tiny thing was that we see like agency as being fractal as well. So like once we self-organize around intentions, we start realizing that the intentions have kind of like this scope, like because intentions naturally to create something, sub-intentions arise and sub-intentions. So you have this natural hierarchy of intentions. So like, intention like solve global warming, is like much more broad in its scope than an intention to make a cup of tea, right? Mm-hmm. So, but like, or if you're building a house, the intention to build a house is a higher scope than order, materials, right? So order materials is part of the manifestation of that intention. that's what, yeah, talking about manifestation, through understanding the mechanism of reality co-creation, through understanding the frequencies, the parts, the phenomena of reality co-creation, we've been able to create something that's universal. Because and we have an ontology that we call the ontology of co-creation. So it's vision, passion, desire, intention, skill, resource, action. So this is like 7 frequencies, 7 words. But the idea is that this is a universal thing, that although we're using specific words which might not be universal, we're pointing to something with those words that's universal explicitly, right? And so, you know, in one reality it's called a mission, and in another reality it's called an intention, and in another reality it's called a goal, and in another reality it's called this. And but we know that there are hyponyms, and that there we can say, well, a goal is this, and you know, it's like, for example, a wish and a request. They're both desires, right? So, or you know, a rose and a dandelion, or you know, like a rose and a tulip are flowers. So flower is the hyponym of tulip and rose, right? And so this is about, we want to bring everyone together and allow everyone to use their own ontology in their own games, and then synergize them through like meta ontologies, you know? So like global warming, solving global warming would be like a desire at like a global level, but like we can synergize and connect all of the groups with similar intentions or desires, regardless of the language they're using, regardless of their ontology, by mapping the hyponymic graph of how ontologies connect to other ontologies. And then once all the resources are visible, people can, and the agreements, then it's like, if we want to transform the world, we've got to see what's going on, and we need a way to collaborate and co-create. That's it. That's basically it. Like right now, like like global warming has like loads of solutions, but like maybe the problem is some people aren't aware of the problem, let alone the solutions. And even once you're aware of the solutions and the problems, how do you create the solutions? You need to be aware of all the resources and the skills. So there's 2 things: is making it visible, is making the problems visible, the solutions visible, the skills, resources, assets, desires, intentions, and all of that. Make all of that visible. Then you needed an algorithm or an intelligent system to facilitate collaboration. And we've realized you have to take into account emotions, because people get triggered and they don't want to work together. And they are holding pieces of puzzle that need to come together to solve things like global warming. So we've had to like go through all this inner work, and we've had to embody it ourselves. And for the last 3 years of living nomadic, it's also involved surrendering to trust, letting go of fears, and the whole, there's like this whole thing with manifestation, that on some level we create our reality with our thoughts, and our feelings are a guidance system. So this kind of information is also coming through channels like Bashar and Abraham, Pleiadians, extraterrestrial sources, non-physical sources of intelligence. And I know that's controversial, but that's just, I'm just expressing myself in the reality I'm in right now, and that's real to me. Like, doesn't have to be real to anyone else. And like, but we have the experience of being guided, and part of it is understanding manifestation on that level too. And but it's sorry, I'm just kind of
I want to end it. No, I'd like to end it with saying, like, we come out of the closet in that sense. That's what I keep saying. Like Nikola Tesla brought us AC energy. There's nothing more grounded that's been used by more people, whether they were Hitler, Gandhi, like in India or whatever. Everyone uses his genius, but he, if you read about him, said he was in contact with extraterrestrial civilization. So whether he was or not, I don't care. But people need to start respecting, like this, like respecting each other and digging deeper and not judging each other, like on all these things. Because, like, look at the fact of that. You know, everyone uses Tesla's, like, thing, but he was, for all intents and purposes, like, as wacky as me. Like, you know, like, so
I've read that research as well. You know, that's part of his history, is he believes in touch with extraterrestrials.
What your guys are doing is interesting, because I remember I had a partner, and her and I used to run all the time. And I told her, I said, you know, when I'm running uphill, I work on my form, I work on my breathing. I'm a better runner. When I run downhill, I almost hurt myself. I like let my arms flail. I look horrible, blah, blah, blah. And I started thinking about it because I noticed that I work better. I create more when I'm not in a comfort. When you find comfort, it really crushes creativity for me. And then I'm starting to think, I'm like, man, how do I handle, you know, being able to afford comfort and still keep this like creative process, this drive within me? And what you guys are doing, once again, is like making sure you stay in that creative zone. So no, bravo and hats off to you. Cause yeah. And you're definitely, hearing how you guys live made me reevaluate and see what meta currency and meta value are, and how algorithms can aid that, and how humans can perform and function under it. And yeah, it's been enlightening. So I really appreciate the example you guys set and the work you're doing.
Thank you. I got chills for that. Thank you for thank you for seeing us.
Yeah,
Anything you guys want to add before we stop recording here?
I'm just going to add that a vacuum thing to thank this guy named Anthony and Robert out of the Netherlands. Last year, we spent a year in a gifted place, this big building with these floors.
Two big buildings.
These big buildings.
One after the other.
Anthony was a believer in the resource-based economy and spirituality and all this stuff, and he worked his magic, and that's just, the gift economy is real, man. Like, co-creation is alive, like you're saying, Greg. Like anyone can do what we do. And if we can all do it a little more together, then it's even easier for anyone to to have everything. Let's have our cake and eat it. We can do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, thanks, guys. All right, you go ahead.
I'm grateful for the opportunity to like speak about some of these things, because I've been in a little bubble of my own, like, which I enjoy, but it's also nice to share. So thanks for also creating the space for this kind of self-expression. And yeah, I'm just excited about like the next few years, because I really feel like we're at a breakthrough moment collectively, and we've done so much individual stuff, you know, like humanity, I'm saying humanity have done a lot of inner work and like kind of transformation on the inside, but it hasn't yet kind of manifested as a collective breakthrough, like, you know, collective transformation. I feel like it's coming in 2018 is like this kind of more grounded, action-y, getting it done, like a bit more militant energy, you know, like I do appreciate that about the military. They're organized, you know, they get shit done, and it's like, it's time for a bit of that energy, you know. And like I'm looking forward to seeing like what we co-create, because there's so much abundance, you know. Those solutions are there, they really are. And I really feel like from my perspective, like this following your passion is super important, and I just recommend everyone just surrenders and follows their passion and trusts their feelings and enjoys the experience and enjoys duality, and the light and the dark are both perfect. And you know, it's like that what you're talking about, going out your comfort zone. It's like when you see things you don't want, it doesn't have to like pull you down, you know. It's like, actually that helps me see what I do want and expand. So it's through duality that we expand, through the contrast of what we do want, what we don't want, that there's this like rich texture creatively where we can play and expand. And yeah, I'm feeling like excited about just unleashing the collective abundance, like, and it's just going to be like crazy. It's just let's just, you know, hang around and make that happen. We're staying on the planet for that, I think, you know. It's like, it's worth being here for the experience of that revolution.
That's the only fear of death I have, is I'm going to miss out on what can be accomplished. The only thing that's keeping me on this planet is like, no, I can't not see what happens next.
I seriously think it's going to be like a UFO landing, and it's like an explosion, like a supernova. It's not going to be a subtle thing when all these innovations, you know, all these game-changing global innovations, they all connect and synergize, and everyone's going to be like, whoa, where the hell did that come from? What's going on? And you know, it's like,
I think we're going to solve. Yeah, we'll solve problems that were never contemplatable before. A lot of humans never had the opportunity to contemplate air travel. And just in the same way, nobody can really understand a world without poverty. And I think we're like now have the tools where I can see poverty being eradicated, human behavior changing to the point that, you know, we start having a more of a balance. And, you know, these weren't there for our parents and grandparents. And I've noticed when I talk to kind of older generations, they can't even contemplate these things without the understanding. And so that's why, like, when you guys speak, I can hear it, but I've had the fortunate ability and access to other, you know, the Holochain interview and all the reading and writing I've been doing on that to make sense of what you guys are doing. So yeah, you're way ahead of stuff, and I'm just gleaning a lot of information. So thanks again.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having us.
Okay, guys. All right. Have a good one.